Welcome back, everyone. And in today's topic discussion on the Real Deal Durham Podcast, I'm going to talk about why a house is not an investment. Yes, that's right. I said it. A house is not an investment. But whoa, wait, before you all click off, walk away and say, this guy's out of his mind, let me walk you through why I feel a house is not an investment. You know, I have this conversation a lot with, home buyers and investors, depending on where they land there. But this is where it always comes down to. You live in a house, but you live off your investments. I'll say that one more time. You live in a house, inside a house, but you live off your investments or off the income from your investments. So let's break it down what that actually looks like. Before we get into why I think a house is not an investment, I'm going to give you two definitions. I'm going to define what an investment is in a traditional sense, and then I'm going to define what a house is, and then we'll compare what that actually looked like. So I pulled a couple definitions. So definition of an investment, it's the action or process of investing money for a profit or material result. It's also a thing that is worth buying because it may be profitable or useful in the future. And the third definition is it's an act of devoting time, effort, or energy to a particular undertaking that you expect to be worthwhile in the future. Now, that's the definition of an investment. I think that all makes sense, whether you're investing in real estate, stocks, or some other investment vehicle. But let's define a home so I can show you why a house is not an investment. So a house, definition of a house, like what I'm in right now. It's a building for human habitation, especially one that is lived in by a family or small group of people. It's also defined as some place to provide a person or animal with shelter or living quarters. And the final definition of a home, it's a space to provide accommodation. Now, if you just go back and you listen to those definitions, they are completely different. One is all about actually being able to generate income or some sort of return, and one is about actually being able to live. Guys, I'll say it again. You live in a house, but you live off your investments. So now that we know the definitions, I want to explain to you why a house is not an investment. Now, there's three big reasons I'm going to get into today, but here's just a couple. A house is not an investment because of the lack of diversification. A house is not an investment because of the lack of liquidity. A house is not an investment because it depends on the local market where that house is located. And the last one, a house is not an investment because of the opportunity costs. Now, the three main reasons that I want to break down in this topic discussion are the three C's. I call it the three C's, Triple C, Craig's Crew, all that good stuff. So the three main reasons why a house is not an investment is 1, comparison, 2, cash flow, and 3, CapEx or capital expenditures. So we'll break down those a little bit now. So the first thing I want to get into is the comparison. I'm going to compare why a house is not an investment. Now, for all you math nerds, get out your pen, get out your calculator, because we're going to be doing some numbers. Now, if you're not a big numbers fan, that's fine. Just bear with me and really try to internalize what I'm saying so you can get that comparison. So I took this from an actual example in the Durham region. So 35 years ago, house is worth $300,000. 35 years later, that house is worth $1.5 million. So I say it again, $300,000, and then 35 years later, it's worth $1.5 million. Not a bad return, right? Right? Wrong. That's exactly what I thought. I was like, oh, that's sick. Like that return must be crazy. When you actually break it down over 35 years, that turns out to be a 4.7 annualized return. That's under 5%. Now, again, it's not like the worst. It's not like you're losing money, but under 5%, that's not a super exciting return that I'm going to tell all my friends and family about. Now, if you look at it from an investment side, if you took that same $300,000, you put it into like a regular S&P index fund for 35 years at 10%, which is the average, you're going to be left with $8 million at the end of 35 years. Yes, 8 million. So the difference here, just comparing, we have 1.5 million in the house and 8 million if you were to invest that in the stock market in a nice and easy low risk ETF like the S&P 500. So that's a huge difference there. And one's giving you a 4.7 return and the other's giving you a 10% return. But Isaiah, I didn't invest the whole $300,000. I just invested the down payment. Sure, let me show you those numbers as well because it still proves the same. So on a $300,000 house with 20% down, you're about 60K, just 60K, whatever the closing costs are, whatever. So if you take that same number, $60,000, 4.7% return, which is what we saw on the big number, you're left with $300,000 after 35 years. Not bad. But let's see what it's looking like if we invested that in the stock market with something like the S&P 500. 60K, 10% over 35 years, you're left with 1.6 I think it's $1.67 million. So again, we can run this calculation any way you want, but it's safe to say on the comparison side, a house is not an investment. It's because you live in it. It's not meant to make money or grow off it there. So the second element of why a house is not an investment is cash flow. Now, cash flow is like the money left over from your investment that you're able to bring in. You can spend it on whatever you want, your watch, your Bugatti, living expenses, all that good stuff. But let's compare it here. So with a house, your opportunity cost is a big issue or a big factor that you need to take into play while contemplating if the house is an investment or not. The equity that you have in your house is tied up. Like you can't access it. It just sits there. It's not like you can go pull 30K or pull 10K out of your house. Like there's nothing. If you do, you're adding more debt. And again, the opportunity cost of doing that hinders you from getting into other higher yielding investments. Also a down payment, which is very simple. Down payment, your mortgage costs, they're tied up in the house. You have to pay your mortgage every month. And the down payment that you put on your house is pretty much locked in there forever. It's very rare that you'll be able to access more than 80% of your home's additional value. So that initial 20% that you put in there, that's locked up, and you're not seeing that until you either sell or you completely pay off your mortgage there. So something to be considered. Another thing to be considered here is the transaction cost of actually owning a house. Buying or selling a house does not come without fees. On the buying side, there's all sorts of closing costs. You have your lawyer fees. You have your renovations if you're fixing it up, land transfer tax. You got to pay your real estate commissions because your boy needs to eat as well, right? So you're paying a lot of transactional costs to just get into this investment versus on the stock side or something more liquid. It's very easy to get in and out of stock. So you pay maybe a couple trade fees, but nothing like the closing costs or real estate fees that go with these larger transactions. And the final thing here related to cash flow is limited flexibility. Now, I touched on it earlier, but having so much money tied up in your house as an investment, in your opinion, really limits you because it's all in one asset. Anything happens, like you're so tied up in this that you're not liquid, you're not diversified because everything's tied up into your house. And the worst thing, you probably can't access it, which is another thing that's a big deal there. Now, with all your money in your house, you're limiting your ability to go out for other investments. Someone comes to you with a real cool business opportunity. You might not have the ability to do it based on all the money being tied up in your house. So that's something that I don't love or that I don't think about when I'm thinking of the house as an investment. Again, you live in your house, but you live off your investments. Now, the last thing I wanted to touch on here is CapEx. CapEx stands for capital expenditures. So those are the big things related to your house. But for this, I kind of summed it up with everything related to the cost of actually owning a house. Now, if you were going to own a house for 35 years, I'm going to tell you straight up, it does not happen for free. You can't just buy a house and 35 years later with no money out of pocket think it's going to appreciate to that 1.5 million. It may go up a little bit, but if you're not putting the money into the house that you need to, there's no way you're going to get that kind of value or even have a house that's going to be standing at the end of 35 years. Now, there's a lot of stuff, but I'm actually going to read it to you because I actually want you to break down what is actually happening in home ownership. So one, maintenance costs. You're going to have to do those little repairs, the window cracks, the flooring repairs, if there's any leaks, plumbing, all that stuff is going to happen when you're owning a house. Insurance, you have to have insurance on your house. Now, you don't have to have renter's insurance or some of the more intense insurance policies, but you're paying insurance on your house every month. Knock on wood, hopefully you never have to use it, but it is something that you're paying for your house for the entirety of those 35 years. Financing costs. Most people don't have the money to just, slap down that cash on your property. So they're usually financing it, and that comes with mortgage payments as well as interest payments on the house. Property taxes. Now, depending where you are in the city, whether you're in Oshawa, Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, the property taxes are slightly different, but wherever they are, you're going to pay them because the city provides you services, and as a result, you pay those through your property taxes. Renovations. Now, I don't know if you know anything about design or how homes look, but if you look at homes over the years, they've changed over the years. It's not the same kind of design that happened 30 years ago or even 5 years ago for that matter. So owning a home for that long, you're going to be putting some renovations in to keep that up to the standard that is around the community. Utilities. You need your water, you need your hydro, and you got to make sure you're paying the light bill. So the utilities are something you're paying just to keep the house kind of running there. The roof. The roof is not going to last 35 years. And if you have a roof that does it, please call me because I need the name of that roofer. So at least once or twice in the lifespan of your property, you're probably going to end up doing your roof. And I'll tell you, because I just did a roof, they are not cheap. So something you got to factor into actual home ownership. Appliances, you have a dishwasher, washer, dryer, fridge, freezer, all those things are going to either need to be repaired or replaced over the lifetime of that house. HVAC, whether it's your furnace, your air conditioner, or any of your HVAC systems will need to be taken care of over the life of your house as well. Now there's yard work, house cleaning, all those things, like you're not getting that money back. Like you don't invest $150 into landscaping or lawn care and expect to get that back when you sell your house. Those are costs that go into home ownership, but you don't actually see them back. Now, some of the bigger items here might be foundation. If you have any cracks or leaks there, that's something that you want to take care of through your home ownership experience as well. And finally, if you're in a condo or even a townhouse condo, you're going to be paying a ton of condo fees that may or may not actually be received back when you go into selling your property there. So all these fees, all these stuff that I told you about, like for home ownership, you got to pay for that. And it amounts to about 2.5% per year. And the thing is, you don't get that money back. I'm telling you, you don't get it back. All this stuff I talked about, that's just the cost, or I call them sunk costs into owning a house, because you're not getting that back, and it's very rare you're going to get that back in terms of some kind of return when you sell your property. So with that being said, let me break down those numbers from the comparison side again to show you what it actually looks like. So like I said before, you have a house for $300,000, 35 years, it appreciates to $1.5 million. Good for you. Now, before I told you that's like a 4.7 annualized return, which again is average at best. But now if we take away that 2.5% of all the sunk costs, maintenance, and CapEx that you put into actually owning a house over that 35 years, your return goes from 4.7% to 2.2%. Oh my goodness. I swear banks were paying more than that at times there. So if you're trying to tell me that a house is an investment and you're getting 2.2% on your house, I think we need to have a better discussion on what your investments actually look like. And if you take that 2.2%, you apply it to the $300,000 for the original house, you're left with $640K after 35 years. That's not even $1 million. And if you take that same example, same numbers, and you bring it over to like a traditional investment in like a S&P 500 ETF type of investment, that that 300 grand that you would have put in on the house, now it's not going to make 10% in the S&P because I'll take away the 2.5. So let's say it makes 7% or 7.5% over the next 35 years. Instead of 8 million that we were going to get, we're still left with $3.7 million after the 35 years. So in this final example with the CapEx included, we're talking about $640,000 versus $3.7 million. Guys, I'll say it again. You live in a house, you live off your investments. But guys, you're probably wondering like, okay, Isaiah, maybe a house is an investment. I get you. But what do I do? Let me tell you. So there's three big things I want you to understand after this conversation. The first thing, you live in a home, you live off your investments. Don't think about a house as something like a big nest egg or a big investment vehicle that you're getting into. It's shelter. Everyone needs shelter. So if you decide to buy a home because home ownership is important to you, amazing. I love that for you. And hey, I'd love to help you buy if you need it as well. But if you decide to rent as your shelter, that's okay too. Shelter is something like it's a basic need for all humans. So whether you buy, own, or rent, it's just shelter. It's not an investment. Now, in terms of an investment, that is something where you can live off of. Investments spit out income. They give you money so that you can live that lifestyle. Investments pay for your living. Investments pay for your lifestyle. Investments pay for those luxuries. So again, you live in a house, but you live off your investments. Number two, buy a house and invest. I'm not saying real estate is a bad thing. I'm not saying buying a house is a bad thing. I'm saying it can't be the only thing. You can't just buy a house and say, okay, I bought a house, I'm set, like nothing else is gonna go wrong, I'm good, I don't need to invest, I'm perfect. No. I'm saying that a house is only one part of the equation. You wanna solidify where you live, and home ownership gives you way more protection and stability than renting or leasing or anything like that. So if you want to own a home or buy, great, but you still need to invest. Now, whether that's rental properties, whether that's in the stock market, whether that's some sort of like crazy different alternative investment, I don't care. I just want you to know you need to buy or own a house as well as invest. Now, one of the big things that I like to do with my clients is that Living the Dream program that I've spoken about. It's where you either buy or live where you want, and then you invest somewhere where it makes sense. So if that's interesting for you, drop me a comment below. I'd love to give you some more information on that. And the number 3 thing you need to know after this conversation, please guys, work with a professional. If it's not me, please connect with a professional who understands this process. They understand that a house is not an investment, but they understand where you are financially. They're going to work with you, either get you into a house where you can own or rent, and then make sure that your investment side of your lifestyle is still going along. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to see you 35 years later thinking you're going to have all this money and you look around and you're like, oh crap, it's not exactly how I planned. So again, work with a professional, let them help you reach your financial goals, whether that's through home ownership or through investing or a combination of them both. So I think that's it for me, guys. And I'll say it one more time. It's Isaiah Henry. It's the Real Deal Durham Podcast. And remember, a house is not an investment because you live in a house and you live off your investments. Guys, Isaiah Henry here, Real Deal Durham Podcast. We will be right back.